Joining me now is Aziz Hasan, who is the CEO of Kickstarter. Aziz, great to have you here with us this morning, and thanks so much for taking the time to help us break this down even further. First and foremost, what led to this decision to adopt the 4-day work week and start it out as a trial?
Yeah, sure. And thanks, Brett, for having me on the show today. At Kickstarter, we've had a real long history of just being thoughtful and approaching the way that we design our workplace. It's always trying to think about creative ways, I think, as we build to the future that can be more flexible. So, testing out a 4-day work week was just a continuation of that spirit and that intention. Personally, it's been something that I've been interested in for a long time, and I've sort of experimented on my own through my career, with this and trying it out. But when we saw the opportunity to test it out alongside the 4-day week campaign that launched basically last month, we thought it was a great opportunity to carry some of the learnings that we've had over the last 18 months, shifting and sort of evolving during the pandemic.
What are some of the main checkpoints or the grading criteria that you're going to look across to see if this has been successful?
Yeah, so right now we're very early on in designing what the product, what the pilot's going to look like. So I don't have the details, and we're working those things out in the coming months. The thing that is sort of underlying, I think, philosophically for me is that it's going to be about the outcomes towards our mission, not just about the hours that we put in. And so I see an opportunity here for the team to be able to actually find ways, creative ways, to actually think about how we're using our time and energy, and to make sure that we're driving that as potently towards our mission as possible, but also making sure the team is fully supported, that they're engaged, and they're feeling fulfilled by the work.
Coming out of the financial recession, one of the biggest workplace perks that companies had tried to put out there for talent acquisition and retention was workplace flexibility, the opportunity to work virtually or from home that was in place before the pandemic. And now coming out of the pandemic-induced recession, the question is, okay, how will this reframe the future of work and where people are working, or how many days they are working as well? And so what are the timelines that you look across for this to really hit some sort of critical mass with the 4-day work week?
Yeah, sure. It's hard to tell, I would say, just across industries, different types of teams, different types of businesses. But I would say for us at Kickstarter, I think what we learned over the last 18 months is we just sort of jumped directly into remote work, almost as quickly as, in early March, was that we can actually be just as productive as we were when we were sitting in our Brooklyn office. And so what we even found was team members who were remote found actually a much better experience, and they could be more engaged with us. And so what I see is that over the next, 6 to 12 months, you're going to see, I think, a lot of companies, a lot of people experimenting with this idea. And what's really exciting to me is that actually, as we are all experimenting, what we're doing is we're driving up the learnings that we're going to have as companies, as businesses, and how to actually increase flexibility in the right ways.
Perhaps one of the biggest questions from an employee perspective, is this going to impact pay?
Yeah, so the model that we have here is actually, like you mentioned, I think early on, it's 4 days, 32 hours. This is not impacting pay.
Okay, and so going forward, even some of the other things that we think about, whether that be paid time off, whether that be, some of the other flexibility pitches that have been made to employees before they even start working at a company, I think about what is also getting kind of either revamped along with the 4-day work week as well. What are some of those considerations?
Yeah, so I would say that it's still too early to tell. We'll be doing this pilot in mid 2022, and so what we plan to do there is, as we've tested it out with our teams and we've sort of learned how it's working, to really look at designing the full work experience and not just about this one aspect of it. So it's too early to tell, but I'd expect that we're going to look at the holistic picture for our team.
One of the things that I enjoy about the backstory with Kickstarter is that it is a public benefit company, corporation, where you are essentially prioritizing the greater good that you can bring to the workforce, the broader environment that you find yourself within, and the platform as well, instead of straight up prioritizing, going public or profits and things of the like. And while, it is a profit-driven business model, it still is making sure that you have opportunities like this to test where you can be a better service for employees, service for so many of the end users. How do you kind of look across the business to see what this will unlock in that next wave of growth for Kickstarter?
Yeah, sure. And I think what you touch on there is really important. It opens up possibilities for us, not focusing solely on one aspect and actually thinking about our larger mission, the impact that we can have, and all of the stakeholders sort of involved. And so when I think about this, what I hope is that we're actually increasing, I think, the focus the attention, the harmony that people can find across work, across their lives, that ultimately is going to result in much greater experiences for our creators, for our backers, and for our mission at large.
I imagine a lot of real estate moguls out there may be asking, okay, so if we see a 4-day work week, does this mean companies will need less office space to work with? Do you kind of look across if this pilot goes well, if this test goes well, and it kind of checks all the boxes of what you were expecting, productivity remains high. You're still able to see high platform engagement among the end users and consumers, and the business continues to accelerate as well. Do you start to look at kind of trimming down the actual real estate that is necessary to make this happen, knowing that the 4-day work week is going to look different in how the collaboration is taking place across teams?
Yeah, I think, the last point you make there is about how collaboration takes place. And so I have this sort of idea in my mind that collaboration is such a critical part of the puzzle. And so each team is going to design that slightly differently, and they already do for the ways that they work. And so what I think a lot about is how do we design shared collaboration, either across teams or across the entire company? And what does that look like in the future for different types of teams? And so I think as you were asking, I think different companies are going to be doing, what's sort of best for them. I've heard from folks that, are really sort of doubling down on being together. I've heard from folks who are fully going, 100% remote and saying that is just the way that they're going to go forward. I look for us to sort of learn, but I think what we've learned coming out of the pandemic and in this remote workforce is that we have a lot of impact and a lot of collaboration that we can actually do today. And now it's really thinking about how do we enhance, how do we build on top of what we've already learned these last 18 months.
Just lastly, while we do have you, because you're not a publicly traded company, we don't always have insights to how the business is growing and so forth. I would be remiss if I didn't ask, what type of engagement are you seeing with the Kickstarter platform, the coronavirus pandemic?
Yeah.
It's been so disruptive to many different facets of society and how people are making money and how they are funding projects. But Kickstarter has been one of those sources where creators continue to come back to, whether they be creatives, new businesses, entrepreneurs, and so forth. So what does engagement look like with the platform right now, and what are some of the targets that you're looking to hit?
Yeah, and I think one of the most profound things that we saw, as the pandemic sort of went on, was that, early on, creators were actually very hesitant to run their projects. And, just like everybody else, they're trying to figure out what's happening, what's going to be the new normal, should I launch now, should I not? And the most remarkable thing was the people that wanted to support, the backers, did not wane at all. They continued to support. And actually what we've seen is they continue to grow their support, especially in areas, of arts projects or our design and technology projects or games projects. And so what is, I think, just amazing is that as we spend more time and we understand, I think, the value and the impact of creative work, when we are here home, really spending time thinking about what it is that we're doing, that tremendous impact, that feeling that we have in our gut when we see and feel creative work is driving people to want to support more projects, to launch more creative ideas, to take their passion that maybe they didn't put the time and energy into and just give it a shot. And so I think you're seeing some really healthy creative risk-taking by people with ideas. And I think that is something that is really beneficial. And we're here to help that journey along the way.
Certainly. Aziz Hasan, who is the CEO of Kickstarter, joining us here this morning. Aziz, thanks so much for the time. We'd love to check back in the future as well, especially when this test and this pilot launches within the company. We got to get some updates as well there. So kudos to you and your team for kicking this off.